Hello and welcome to BYJU'S IAS. Tensions have been increasing between US and Iran over the last few weeks. These escalating tensions have plunged West Asia into a crisis, and it is already having an impact on India's national interests. So in this session of Explained, let us analyze these developments in detail. But before that, let us look at what all would be covered in this video. We shall begin by looking at the context in which this topic is in news. Then we shall take a brief look at the background and the history of hostilities between US and Iran. See, for years together, the US has pursued a hostile policy towards Iran. In fact, in 2002, the then US President George W. Bush had called Iran as a part of the axis of evil by clubbing it with Iraq and North Korea. And recently, the US has even labeled Iran as an adversary state. On the other hand, Iran had retaliated by pursuing a proxy war against American interests, and it is in the process of developing nuclear weapons as well. And Iranians, with the support of their government, have chanted "Death to America" on the streets. So it is very important to understand this background before we discuss the ongoing developments. And finally, we shall talk about the impact of these rising tensions on global geopolitics and its implications for India. On January 3rd, 2020, the United States assassinated top Iranian commander Qasem Soleimani in a targeted drone strike while he was on a visit to Iraq. This killing has triggered fresh tensions between the two countries, and Iran has retaliated by launching around 12 ballistic missiles against American military bases located in Iraq. This was one of the rare instances where two state actors have launched overt attacks against the state targets of each other on the soil of a third country. These developments have shaken the Middle East and as well as the rest of the world, because any full-fledged conflict between the two would be disastrous for the volatile Middle East region and as well as for the global economy. But first we need to understand who was Qasem Soleimani and why did the US choose to target him. See, for the past 20 years, Qasem Soleimani has been the commander of the Quds Force, which is an elite branch of the IRGC or the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. The IRGC in itself is an elite branch of the Iranian armed forces, and the Quds Force, which is a part of the IRGC, is responsible for conducting special operations and covert operations on foreign soil in order to protect Iran's interests and extend its influence in the region. As the commander of the Quds Force, Soleimani had been instrumental in supporting various Shia militant outfits and other proxies of Iran, which have targeted and carried out attacks against Iran's rivals such as the United States, Israel, and Saudi Arabia. So after the killing of Qasem Soleimani, President Trump stated that the US had to neutralize him because the militant outfits supported by the Quds Force posed an imminent threat to American soldiers and diplomats who are deployed in the region. But to understand this rivalry and hostility between US and Iran, we need to take a brief look at the history of their relationship. See, in the early 1950s, the democratically elected Prime Minister of Iran, Mohammad Mossadegh, had sought to nationalize the Iranian oil industry, which was controlled by Britain. But the British government and the US government had opposed this policy because they feared that they might lose their control over Iranian oil. And they were also concerned that Iran might fall under the communist influence of the Soviet Union. So with the help of Iran's monarch, the Shah of Iran, the CIA of the United States, and the MI6 of UK staged a coup to overthrow Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh. Many Iranians had regarded Prime Minister Mossadegh as the leading champion of secular democracy who could resist any foreign domination of Iran's resources. So his overthrow led Iranians to oppose the US and the Western countries, and they came to believe that the Shah of Iran was merely a puppet of the United States. These anti-West sentiments laid the foundation for the Iranian Revolution of 1979. This popular uprising led to the fall of the pro-West monarchy, and it was replaced by an anti-West theocracy. The new regime of Iran was set up under the supreme leader Ayatollah Khomeini, and this established Iran as a prominent anti-West Shia power in the region. Then, the Iranian revolutionaries targeted the US embassy in Tehran and they held the American diplomats hostage for nearly 444 days. So these developments are the root cause of today's rivalry between the US and Iran. Meanwhile, the supreme leader of Iran, Ayatollah Khomeini, set up the IRGC in 1979 to protect Iranian interests by waging a proxy war against its rivals in West Asia. The Quds force of the IRGC would go on to sponsor a number of militant groups such as the Hamas and the Hezbollah against Israel as a part of Iran's support to the Palestinian cause. See, Hamas is a Sunni fundamentalist group that is based out of the Gaza Strip, and it is backed by Iran in order to target Israeli and American interests in the region. And Hezbollah is a Shia fundamentalist outfit that is based out of Lebanon, and it is backed by Iran in order to wage its proxy war against US and Israel. Iran has even supported the Houthi rebels of Yemen as a part of its proxy war against Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia being a Sunni power and Iran being a Shia power, they both share a long history of rivalry and both have targeted each other through such proxy wars. So in all these proxy wars of Iran, the Quds force of the IRGC, led by Qasem Soleimani, has been instrumental in extending Iran's influence over the last 20 years. Due to his key role in Iran's proxy wars, Soleimani was seen as a celebrated military leader in Iran, and he was even considered to be close to the supreme leader. This made him a legitimate target for the United States, and in anticipation of imminent attacks against American interests, the US decided to assassinate Qasem Soleimani. But the killing of Soleimani is also rooted in the ongoing tensions over Iran's nuclear program. Since early 2000, Western countries, particularly the United States, have believed that Iran has been covertly developing nuclear weapons under its nuclear program. But Iran has claimed that its nuclear program is civilian in nature and meant for generating electricity and for medical purposes. But the US has claimed that Iran has been producing highly enriched uranium which could be used in nuclear warheads. That's the reason why then President George Bush had called Iran as a part of axis of evil by clubbing it along with Iraq and North Korea. Since Iran had made tremendous progress in the development of ballistic missiles which could deliver nuclear warheads, Iran's nuclear program had caused a lot of concern for its rivals such as the United States, Israel and Saudi Arabia. According to the United States, Iran was producing highly enriched uranium for producing nuclear weapons despite being a member of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. And the US had reported this violation to the UN Security Council in 2006. The US followed this up by imposing economic sanctions against Iran, which targeted its key sectors such as oil and gas. During this period of sanctions, India was caught in a tight spot as US exerted pressure on India to cut down oil imports from Iran. But India had worked out alternative payment routes in order to bypass the American sanctions because Iranian oil was crucial for India's energy security. According to reports, US and Israel had targeted Iran's nuclear program during this period by covertly assassinating Iran's nuclear scientists and by destroying few nuclear centrifuges through covert cyber attacks by using a malware such as Stuxnet. The combined effect of these sanctions on Iran's economy and these covert attacks had led to a severe increase in tensions between Iran and US, and it had brought the two countries to the brink of conflict. But these tensions were diffused in 2015 with the signing of the Iran Nuclear Deal or JCPOA or the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. This nuclear deal was signed between Iran and the P5+1 countries together with the European Union. See, P5+1 includes the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council plus Germany. Under this deal, Iran had agreed to scale back its enrichment of uranium and open up its nuclear facilities for inspection by IAEA inspectors. And in return, the United States had agreed to lift the economic sanctions that had crippled Iran's economy. The P5+1 countries had agreed to provide technological support for Iran's civilian nuclear program. This agreement had relatively reduced tensions in the region, but in 2018, Donald Trump unilaterally decided to quit the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action by claiming that Iran was violating the terms of the deal. This decision of the United States has reignited tensions between the two countries, and since last year, the US has reimposed stringent sanctions which has again crippled the Iranian economy. As per these sanctions, the US has demanded the major importers of Iranian oil, such as India, to zero out oil imports from Iran. And this time, India has succumbed to American pressure and it has cut off oil imports from Iran. So the economic impact of these sanctions has pushed Iran to retaliate against American interests by using its proxies. Upon this, last year, the United States has designated the IRGC as a terrorist group and it has blacklisted the Quds Force despite they being a part of the Iranian state. These provocations from the United States has pushed Iran to exploit its geographic advantage over the Strait of Hormuz. See, the Strait of Hormuz is a strategic choke point that is located near the Persian Gulf, and a majority of global oil supplies pass through this narrow strait, which is largely controlled by the IRGC. Last year, a number of attacks took place on oil tankers which were passing through the strait, and most of these attacks have been attributed to the proxies of Iran. In June 2019, Iran shot down American drones for violating Iranian airspace, and this further increased tensions between the two countries. Then later, the Houthi rebels of Yemen carried out a drone strike against Saudi Arabia's oil refineries as well. Then in December 2019, the Kataib Hezbollah, which is a proxy of Iran, was accused by the US of killing a US military contractor and injuring American soldiers in a terror attack. In response to this attack, the US carried out airstrikes against the bases of Kataib Hezbollah. Angered by these airstrikes, pro-Iranian demonstrators attacked the US embassy in Baghdad, and the US saw the hand of the Quds Force in organizing these attacks against its embassy, and within a few days, the US assassinated the commander of the Quds Force, Qasem Soleimani, while he was on a visit to Iraq. Iran treated this assassination as an act of war, and it retaliated by launching 12 ballistic missiles against American military bases that were located in Iraq. During this retaliatory strike, Iran accidentally hit a commercial aircraft of Ukraine, which led to the death of 176 innocent civilians. These developments have significantly increased the chances of a prolonged conflict between US and Iran, or between Iran and its regional rivals. And these tensions have already had a significant impact on global stability and on Indian interests in the region. First, let us talk about the global impact. See, the fact that Iran's retaliatory strikes did not cause any American casualties shows that the attack was designed to send out a strong symbolic message, and it was not designed to trigger a full-fledged conflict. Because Iran had the capability to cause significant damage to American military bases in Iraq if it had chosen to, and yet it has chosen not to. Donald Trump rightly saw this as a sign of de-escalation from Iran, and he ruled out a full-fledged war. So these signs from US and Iran shows that there is room available for negotiations. If these tensions are not resolved through negotiations, then it poses a major risk to stability in the region and as well as to the global economy. If there are no negotiations, then most likely Iran, US, Israel and Saudi Arabia, they are going to escalate their proxy wars against each other, and this threatens peace and stability in the region. any such increase in violence and instability will actually create a fertile ground for radical jihadist outfits, such as the Islamic State and Al Qaeda, to regroup, and this poses a global security threat. And as a result of these tensions, global oil supplies have already been disrupted and oil prices have shot up significantly. So urgent negotiations are needed to restore normalcy in the market and assure investors. So the way forward for the global powers would be to resume diplomatic negotiations in order to revive the nuclear deal. But instead, the European powers have already triggered the dispute mechanism under the nuclear deal against Iran for violating the terms of the deal. So this could invite further economic sanctions against Iran. It has also been reported that global powers might be looking to target Iran and penalize Iran for shooting down a civilian aircraft. Iran sees these actions of the European countries as being taken under American pressure, and it considers them to be provocative. Iran has already threatened to quit the Non-Proliferation Treaty in response to these actions, and if Iran were to quit the NPT, then it will create even more confusion over its nuclear program. So this is where responsible European powers and responsible permanent members of the UN Security Council, such as the United Kingdom, France, Germany, Russia, and China, have a key role to play in order to resolve the situation. These countries need to exert pressure on Iran and United States to return to the negotiating table so that the nuclear deal can be revived. Next, the major implication for India would be on its energy security. Since India imports more than 80% of its crude oil requirement, and since a majority of it passes through the Strait of Hormuz, any instability or conflict in and around the Persian Gulf is bound to affect the supply of oil imports to India, and hence it is bound to affect India's energy security. And volatility in the oil prices and increase in oil prices is bound to place a significant burden on India's import bill. Apart from this, tensions between US and Iran is bound to affect India's strategic ties with both the countries. See, India has a strategic relationship with the US with regard to counter-terrorism, defense cooperation, etc. India also has a strategic relationship with Iran because Iran plays a crucial role in helping India connect with Afghanistan and Central Asia. India has already invested heavily in the Chabahar port project. Iran could also play a crucial role in helping India as far as the Afghan civil war is concerned. So India cannot afford to take sides between Iran and US without affecting its strategic relationship with the other country. So by keeping this delicate balance in mind, India needs to take a pragmatic stand. Apart from this, the ongoing tensions could also affect the well-being of the Indian diaspora in the Middle East. There are around 8 million Indians who reside and work in Middle Eastern countries. Any conflict in the region would definitely affect their well-being, and this would be of utmost concern for the Indian government. Next, India would also be concerned about the impact of these developments on its Shia population. See, India is home to one of the largest Shia populations in the world. These developments between US and Iran could further open up India's Shia population to radicalization, and this would pose an internal security challenge for India. With these implications in mind, the best way forward for India would be to focus on its core national interests, such as energy security, balancing ties between two strategic partners, ensuring the well-being of the Indian diaspora, etc. India would do well to not choose sides between Iran and US, and it should continue maintaining a strategic relationship with both the countries. And in whatever way possible, India can help both the countries to reach the negotiating table so that a diplomatic solution could be worked out which might help restore normalcy to the region. India's primary objective should be the restoration of peace and stability in West Asia. So this is all that you need to know with regard to this topic. Thanks for watching.